I will,
Good evening.
how are you doing?
I'm well.
We're all kind of like filtering in, so we'll be getting going here in a minute.
Okay.
Oh,
Almost got it.
You guys have good.
That was younger.
thank you. I wondered who to thank. Oh, nice. Hey, John, how are you? Good, how are you?
Christmas chocolate.
John, how are you?
Chocolate?
Thanks. Willa, can you hear okay?
Yes, thank you. I'm having technical difficulties with my video. I can use the phone video if that is important.
I think you're okay.
Okay, thank you.
And then, did you want to show the presentation, or do you want me to pull it on my computer?
I'd be happy to, because then I think I can, when we stop for the video, I can advance the slides, and then we can also have, I can make the video transition on
Okay.
Zoom.
Well, if it comes up,
If that works for you.
perfect.
Jonathan, no rush, but let me know when we're good.
I think we're pretty much there.
Okay. Scott, how are
Good,
you?
how are you? You watched that game yesterday? You watched the game yesterday?
Oh, the Super Bowl.
Ah, of course.
Broncos are going to Super Bowl.
Last time they won 5 in a row, they did.
Only if they buy tickets.
All right, we're ready here.
I want to thank everybody for joining us for the November 27th, 2023 City of Idaho Springs work session. And we have 4 items on the work session today, starting with Virginia Canyon Mountain Bike Park. And this is specifically about the signage and trail naming. Jonathan, I'll let you kick it off.
Well, Mayor and Council, we have Gary from Combo with us today. We wanted to give you an update about what's happening out on the trails. As you know, construction's going for phase 2. And we've got a couple of questions we wanted to bring to you, just to get a little bit of direction on. First and foremost, I'll let Gary kind of talk to the updates because they've been managing the project, but they've been working on the mountain and they're progressing pretty quickly. It's actually going pretty well. They've built some of the first features, which I think are going to be really cool once they're, once we have everything built. And like I said, do you want to just kind of take it on the update?
Sure. As usual, you kind of hit the highlights already, but first trail that we have in the plan as the blue or west downhill trail is more than half completed. I'd give you exact linear feet, but they were out building today, so it would be wrong. We measure when it's time to invoice, and we don't measure a lot in between, but the top half from the upper landing down to the hub is pretty complete, and they have about a third or so of the lower half done, and crews are going to be working over towards Buttermilk. So we're kind of, now that weather has set in, we're kind of at that point where that may dictate what parts of the trail we can work on when. Down in the ravine where it's a little snowier and colder and kind of holds on to that snow and ice and ground starts to freeze, it'll get a little more complicated. But 2 winters ago, we built the whole main spine, the climbing trail, from December to April. So we've done this before, and it's very buildable up there. We're super excited about the quality of their work. We've worked with these builders in the past, but I think that they have really stepped up and are doing even better work than we've seen them do. We're utilizing some new techniques that will not only improve the experience, but also minimize maintenance and just make it more sustainable overall. So really excited about the way the experience is coming out. A line on a map is one thing, a pin flag corridor through the woods is another thing, but when you actually see, the artist brush hit the canvas and start to create the experiences that are going to be here for generations, it's pretty exciting to see how this is all coming together. So the 2 builders are crushing it. We've had a fair amount of volunteers from our community, the mountain bike community, out helping as well, once or twice a week. And we've already had kids from the high school come out and help one day as well. They did some sanding for us and move some materials around. That was one of the stipulations with the Trek grant as well, that we would involve youth in the construction process. So ticking that box already. So we're at the point now where we really need to kind of get out ahead of the opening, the expected opening next spring. The longest thing on the project timeline there is getting the signs manufactured. The Trek is going to manage that through a place in the Midwest, and there can be as much as a 8 to 10, maybe longer week lead time on that. So deciding which signs we're going to use from their standard guideline package, and then ultimately where those are placed is kind of the next conversation. But deciding, having that image, that overall plan of how is all this going to come together, which signs are we going to use, where are they going to be placed, those kinds of things really is where we need to get rolling. That's for the main signs, the monument sign at the roads, the kiosks, those kinds of things, those take the longest. And we kind of already know, what the naming and who the partner logos are going to be for that. So part 2 of signage will be actually wayfinding signs with the trail names on them. So it's critical that we kind of get moving on, at least understanding what that process is going to be, what are the steps going to be in that process, and where do we start? So that we can go ahead and get that part of it rolling and make sure that we're not sitting here with a wonderful trail system with no wayfinding, or, that would be a terrible thing to not be able to go open that when we want to open that because we haven't gotten the signs and names done. So that's really what we're looking for tonight, is some agreement, some direction on how's that going to come together.
Okay. We want to make sure, we also mentioned, we've got Mary Jane from the Argo team here. We're trying to be good partners on this project too. So, a lot of these signs, we got to make sure that they go where they need to go for Trek, but we want to work with them too, so they'd be involved in this process. In the end of my staff report, what I really was asking for is 2 things. One is on the signage, we need to work out exact locations of where these signs go, just with the team on the mountain, and make sure things go where they're most safe and most visible and all that kind of thing. But we also, when it comes to naming the trails, I think it's really important that we involve our community in that process in some way. And so I was looking at some of the, we want to make sure that we have this kind of set, because we've been talking about it for a while. We want to make sure that we have the names for the signs when they're built. And so I was kind of thinking maybe we could bring names to council, and I had some that were suggested in my staff report. But as I was thinking about it, I think that we might want to take an approach where we bring this, maybe have a communication or a conversation within the community about this. And so I had recommended this hybrid approach for naming the trails, where maybe what we do is we either do a survey really quickly to come up with some names that could be good for the trails, or maybe we provide some names to the community to vote on, some of these historic names that we came up with, like the 10-day Jack Trail. A&A is a very famous horseback riding operation that was up there for years and years and years. We were just trying to find names that kind of fit, our community, but there's always, we wanted to bring this to council for your decision making. If you have other ideas about what the names could be, we'd love to bring them forward. But what I wanted to do was A, get the direction that we can move forward with figuring out where these signs are going to go, and B, start working on what we're going to name these trails.
Can I make a comment in a work session?
Sure.
I just want to say, from the Argos point of view, if you remember, we are pledged to help provide wayfinding signs, not only at the Argo, but through the community, to the Argo and to the bike trails and things. So I think we need to be looking not just at the wayfinding and the signage at the Argo, but at the signage throughout the community that's going to direct people throughout the community.
Especially considering the parking, right?
Yes,
The fact that we're gonna have
yes.
such dispersed parking, and we have that map we did a couple of years ago.
Right.
But there's gonna be so many points of access within the city, and then getting people just to where the trails start is the first challenge.
Yeah.
And then the wayfinding within the park.
Yeah.
Trek obviously is gonna be, the contract talks are specifically about the wayfinding, what that looks like within the park, but I think that there is a much larger conversation.
Right. And we've done some basic work on the early
Yeah.
wayfinding.
These Trek signs are contractually obligated for the park, and they are pretty well in line with the design principles and color palette that the city has been using. But I think that with that being said, I think there might be some opportunities to figure out how we can build this into a greater effort. It's something that we've talked about a lot about, you know, we want to avoid sign pollution, but we need to start thinking about our signage holistically, like Mary Jane suggested, and that's a really good idea.
I'll make it beautiful signage through town.
Yeah. So that was really what we're looking for, direction for, from council is, any feedback you might have about these signs. Gary had left some notes in red on the top of the sheets that are in your packet, just about kind of what we've been thinking about. And then B, what your preference is for how we go about naming these trails. We're trying to keep this moving too. That's one thing we want to, you know, we want to go through whatever process we need to go through, but we're thinking about a May opening, and we'd like to get the process done so that we can get, you know, we can start working on ordering signs and manufacturing.
You know, Jonathan, I would guess that council probably isn't that interested in naming, you know, themselves, but would probably like input from the community regarding that. You know, I think that we'll probably have pretty good input, I would think. And I think a historical angle is a good angle. We'll see what the folks say. You know, I'm sure we'll end up with something very appropriate.
Some of those mining claims up there have really cool names. There's a lot of alliteration possibilities that we can, I think we can come up with some cool ideas.
Sure.
Would you guys like us to do a survey? Like, how would you guys like us to handle this? Like,
How many signs do you need? How many names do you need? This is the first question.
What we decided is to come up with a list of at least 10 that we can have ready to go and then apply sort of as the trails are ready. The one thing that we have found in seeking community input in the past is that you're gonna need a calling after that. We had over 300 submissions for just one trail in Blackhawk,
I think cutting,
most of which were not really quality ideas.
I think, well, no, actually.
There has to be almost like a selection committee or some group that decides, you know, that these are the 10.
I think it's a good idea, honestly. All it does is open the can of worms that everybody thinks they're gonna get what they want. Even if there's 30 of them and there's 50, somebody else wants that one. So it really it makes for non-hurt feelings. I'm not throwing Will Terry's name out there simply because he wasn't an extremely big biker nor walker or athletic in any way, but he's the only person in town that you can absolutely say 100% that nobody disliked. So it might be a good trail.
And I think there's opportunities to name the Greenway Trail segments. So there's not just those, there's other trails that need identification as people become more aware of what we have.
Absolutely. Well, how does council feel out of these suggestions? Jonathan has ended this with 3 council-led naming process, community-led naming, and then the hybrid approach.
I think hybrid with coming up with about 10 names, is that something reasonable? And then letting, I mean, at that point in time, then you can send it out for a vote for the community. I think that'll take all the hard feelings out of it.
I have to agree, John.
No, not to complicate too much, but we're gonna have a main trail and then you got some branches off of that. Maybe the branches get a name too.
yeah, I think we'd want to like make the distinct pieces so you know where you're at, because some of these trails are going to be separated by skill level, and so we don't want to have like, we want to make sure that it's very clear when you're getting into something.
Yeah.
Maybe a little scary.
So A trail
Yeah.
is this and B trail is this.
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking too. And then we've got like climbing trails and we've got downhill trails, so.
Hiking trails, biking
Yeah.
trails.
And that'll come out on a brochure or you can,
Yeah, I think we do it like a ski map or something.
yeah, exactly.
There's a couple of people.
Sure.
No place to interject, but what we did recently with the current and Carlson Elementary is we provided a QR code that led to a survey with yes or no questions, and then additional questions on renaming Carlson. What would you rename it? What the mascot, what the colors remain the same, or alternate suggestions? I'd be happy to do that with a project like this.
That would be awesome.
Yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Chris,
But
thank you.
guardrails.
Yeah,
Yeah, I think you have to decide, do you involve the community in the brainstorming section? Or do you do the brainstorming and then involve the community in the selection part? So to me, those are kind of the two distinct options.
would be acceptable to council. We have one more council meeting this year. If we come up with, we can work with our partners and come up with a list, and then, we can get that final list of 10 or whatever it is, and then get that approved by you guys, and we'll put it, if we can work with current and get that out to the community, and then maybe we can make a decision about this in January. I think Paul's got one too.
And it just goes to Mary Jane's points about the biking, hiking trails all throughout the paved portions of it anyway. There's no reason that, all names can't be, the names that don't get used for the bike trail up there on the mountain can be, then applied to other trails throughout town, so it's not like anybody can lose out. So, you might have room for, 15 names in there.
I think that'd be great. And it's something that brings a lot of community ownership to our stuff here, so.
Absolutely. Hey,
Hey, I'm just curious, was there a branding exercise done for the trails or?
There was for our wayfinding signs.
Right, there was for the Argo and there was probably one for maybe not for the master plan for downtown. And it seems to me like the wayfinding should there should be at least a mini brainstorm or branding exercise done so that it does put guardrails on what, are you looking historic? Are you looking, and you started the conversation that way. So I would just recommend that instead of these random, ideas that you'll get.
Yeah, what I was thinking is we had been thinking originally about geologic names that are based, like geologic or wildlife, that you made like a bighorn. I was thinking of like really alliterative names like Gleaner Glide, because Gleaner is a mine up there. Or like Ajax is the trail name up there. There's Dora, so I was thinking like Dora the Explorer, like things like that. There's the mining claim. So we have these like mining claim idea names. We have like animal and geography names, and then we have some names that we come up with that are significant just the area, like the Griswold Grind or whatever. And so like I think we can play with some of these ideas and maybe bring categorized lists to council.
Yeah, I mean, I think.
Sounds like a branding
Those
exercise to
sound like
me.
great names to me personally, but that's not my choice. I mean, I think those are good ideas to put, to start the branding ideas. And then really it helps guide your selection committee, but it also helps guide the community giving you those ideas so that, when you do signage with pictures or colors or that kind of stuff, it also ties into that branding so that you really do have a cohesive feel to town instead of throwing spaghetti at the wall.
Makes sense.
Yep.
So can we bring back that kind of brand? Is it okay with council if we bring that branded list back to you next week or next meeting, and then?
that sounds good to me.
Great.
Jeremy?
I'm fine with it.
All right, Scott?
As far as sign locations go, would council like to see, once we've kind of gone through the work of where those signs, what we're thinking about, we gotta talk to the Argo a little bit and make sure everybody's on the same page, but would you guys like to see that one more time before we finalize the purchase or the fabrication order?
Well, it'd probably be a good idea. I gotta tell you, I was impressed with how stout these signs, they're talking 1/4-inch aluminum. I mean, you consider a highway sign is like half that thickness. It's pretty amazing.
Well, they did put this in my staff report, but we had originally 250,000 from Trek. This is an additional $27,000 on
Right.
top of that, so
Yeah.
they basically are,
It may be more than that.
yeah, it's a big commitment.
Depends on how many we order.
Yeah.
But that basic philosophy of, they've got the two different kind of monument style signs, having those at the furthest out point near the roads or parking lots. And then from there, you have a kiosk section that starts the trails. And then we're looking for an additional kiosk in the center of the system, what we call the hub area. So I think those, 5 signs is the thing that we need to move the most quickly on. Deciding that those are gonna be the ones and getting that started. And then we can spend as much time as we want deciding whether it goes 6 feet that way or 100 feet that way.
You guys have any more questions about VCAP right now? Okay. Well, do you want to move on to the
Yep.
CRC?
We are going to move on to the CRC play project.
We've got Carla with us this evening.
Yes, we do.
She's been the architect that's been working on this project, and she's got a presentation she's gonna share. But just as a, a background piece here, what we've been doing is looking at the playground at CRC Park is ready for an update. And so we've been doing some work to determine what that update could look like. And there's some alternatives that we could discuss that might make that space either bigger or easier to play in, or just different for a couple different reasons. So Carla came to kind of give an update on the project. We had a community meeting about this several weeks ago now, and there was some survey responses that we got from both adults and kids about what they'd like to see. So she's here to kind of share an update on the park and give some alternatives about what might be included. And Paul's been working on this project too with Andy, and the mayor's been in a couple of these meetings as well. So
Carla, welcome.
John, if you let me in, then I can share my screen.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, no worries. We have the agenda here just so you can sort of follow along the slides a little bit better.
So,
Thank you guys for thank you all for having me tonight. So I thought I'd start with the schedule just to kind of let you know where we are. Pick panelist or?
Yeah.
Oh, sorry. Yeah. Enlarge this a little bit. So we kicked off the project with the city in September, mid-September, and right now we're still waiting for the survey from the ground survey, basically. So once we have that, then we can really start designing the park. But right now we're still waiting on that, so that should be forthcoming.
I think we got initial today,
Okay,
or that it's nearly done. So
perfect. And I think it's just being drafted, that's what he said. And then, so we've had a couple conversations about this. I presented a initial budget to Andy and the staff. And so and we'll go through that at the end here so that you guys have a better understanding, and that's part of the questions tonight. And then whether or not we need geotech and civil, most likely we will at some minimal level. We had our meeting with the community in October, mid-October, and we'll go through some of those comments and findings that we found there, and then continuing the design process here as soon as we get the survey, targeting at this point mid-May of next year for submission of drawings, and if that takes 8 weeks, then we would start construction in June or July of next year. So we're going to try to speed that up a little bit. We've lost a little bit of time just waiting for the survey and stuff, but we're getting there, and we've got some really good information so far. Any questions on survey or on schedule? Sorry. So this was the survey that was sent out to the schools and sent out to, I think it was posted on Facebook as well. And so And I should get together in that and I owe you, some of the scans from the
Okay,
community meeting as well. So a couple of questions we asked were CRC Park will be, and we asked people to fill in the blank, what that looks like. We asked what percentage should should the park be dedicated to? Should it be for 0 to 2, 3 to 5, 6 to 12? And we'll go through the answers here in a second. The other things we asked are, what kind of theming would you like? Do you want it to be a mining theme? Do you want it to be a mountain theme? Do you want it to be hot air balloons or all natural kind of elements? And then we also asked, what do you want to see in the park? Do you want to see shade? Do you want to see water? Should there be fitness equipment? Should there be a stage for outdoor event kind of things or puppet shows, or for kids to do their little play acting and that kind of stuff. Couple other questions, what kind of activities should we be looking at in a playground and in an elementary setting? We know that running, jumping, spinning, climbing, balancing, all of those items connect to different levels of gross motor and fine motor skills. And so the best case scenario is that you're getting a good balance of all of those things. And what we found from the kids that came to the community session is that that's what they wanted. They wanted something that gave them choices, that they could go from one section to another, that they were able to choose what kind of activity they were going to do and pull their friends into it. What features do you not want to see in the park? So that was a question we asked. And what activities do you feel would be fun for the older kids? If we are building this for 12 plus, what are those activities what do those things look like for older kids? And typically the answer was the bigger slides, the taller climbing, it's everything the little ones want, but bigger and better and larger and higher and faster kind of things. What type of park do you want? Do you want it to be interactive? Do you want it to be imaginative? Should it be a ninja course? Should it be artistic? And, in a lot of these questions we got, yeah, it should be all of those things. So we try to start to look at narrowing it down. We asked, should there be a fence? And this was a hot topic of conversation. Should there be a fence? Nobody wanted the chain link fence that we have now. And when we built Carlson, we know that was the biggest complaint from the kids and from the community, that it looked like a jail yard, basically. That's what the kids used to call it. And so, trying to figure out how do you build it so it's safe, so the kids can't get to the creek, so the kids can't run out into traffic, so somebody can't just come and grab your child hanging off, and run off easily. And so one of the things, and we've got some examples here, but one of the things we looked at was still barriers, and how high do those barriers, how thick, how solid do those barriers have to be, kind of things. And then should there be lighting? So lighting is a question that we got almost a resounding yes on. And one of the concerns we had there was whether or not the statute allowed for into the park after dark, essentially. And so the parents and the kid, well, the parents primarily said, yeah, in these winter months, we want lights out there because we want to be able to take our kids out there. And the other thing we know from a design perspective, from a placemaking perspective, is that lighting makes places safer. That when there's not lighting, that's when people go and hide and sleep and do things that they shouldn't be doing in places. And lighting would actually allow for police to drive by and see from a distance that things are safe and that there's people not doing things.
Are you talking about lights all night long?
Maybe not all night long, but that's part of the conversation, right? Like what does that look like? And are they big spotlights? I would say no. Are they?
We can't have that anyway.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, but we could do motion detector lights is what I would recommend. Personally speaking, I want to be a dark sky city. So having more lights all night long, I don't think is, something I can get behind for me personally.
Sure. and that's all part of that conversation, but my understanding is that statute would have to change because I think, I don't remember if it's specifically, do you know this? And actually you weren't at that meeting, so, but whether or not it had to do with lighting specifically, or the fact that, when the time when public places are open and that kind of stuff. So that's a conversation. If we're open to at least considering lighting, then that's the next step, is to dig into that and really talk about it. And then was there anything else they wanted us to know? So the meeting again was the 16th of October, and we had a decent showing of kids and adults that came. We started with mingling. We had probably 50, 60 pictures pasted along the wall, and just started mingling, and we had books for the kids and to pull apart and tear, and scissors and paper and crayons and markers to really put together their dream playground. Essentially, we asked, the question to them was, what would you design if you could dream the best park for the children and community of Idaho Springs? Really, Andy wanted to be clear that this park is for our community first and foremost. And even though we know that we will be inviting other people into our community, and people see it and say, oh yeah, I want to, it's a great place for the kids to get out and run while we're road tripping across I-70, right? Like, we know that this is an opportunity for the city to give back to the community and make it a special place. So everyone was given paper, scissors, all of that stuff. Then we asked for each person, including each child, to come up and present their ideas. So each person had about 5 minutes to really present what they drew and how they drew it. And I don't have those with me tonight, but I will have them scanned, and John can send those out. But and it was great to see the kids and parents really articulate what it is that they thought was important in the park. And some of the things we gained from that, and I highlighted the key pieces here, but John has this, and so we can distribute this entire packet to you all if you would like that. So one of the things is that it's welcoming to all, that it's inclusive and welcoming to all ages. So even if equipment is geared more toward a 6 to 40-year-old, is where we had the biggest, while we said, the 6 to 18 and then 18 to 40 was that next category. And really we said, those smaller kids need the adults with them. And so the best parks that people had seen around the state and been in were parks that the parents could also be on the equipment. If there's a bridge, then the parents can follow the children on the bridge and have stairs to go down while the kid takes the slide, or the parent takes the slide. So that's how you get that sort of 6 to 40-year-old range. The other thing that came up was the kids were pretty loud. They wanted a colorful park. They didn't want just something that blended in to the environment necessarily. They wanted something that was fun and exciting and felt different to them, and that came out also in, if you want animals in the park, what kind of animals do you want to see? You want to see bears and tigers, or bears and mountain lions, I should say, cougars. No, we want to see elephants and giraffes and things, African safari animals, things that we don't see all the time. They want a different experience, kind of thing, is what we heard. And then as far as themes on the park, the one thing that we did hear was that we don't want all mining. We have enough mining in town, and we don't want it to all be mining. So that's that was something that I guess we hadn't really thought of before. But that was what did come up over and over was water. So the idea that we live in a community that water is so important to, but the kids can't play in the water around here because the water is fast moving. And so we've got rafting and fishing and the water is right through the center of our community, but the kids can't get to it. And so that was one thing that, oh, well, if there was a way to add water to the park, that would be great. Could it be a splash pad? I personally don't know if a splash pad is the best opportunity here because most of the year we can't really use it, right? But there are ways of adding fountains or things that, spitting water that your kids can control. One thing we were talking about in our last meeting was mimicking what is it, Paul, what was it? The mining, the rock drill that could also shoot water at
water cannons.
the water
You wanna
cannons.
aim them at the rafters.
Yeah. And things that are sort of fun and interesting, but they add water, but they don't necessarily fully embrace, a full splash pad kind of thing. So I've got some thoughts, some ideas there. Big fun is, colorful and big fun. Journey through different pieces was another thing. We wanted a multi-purpose. Gracie Keene said, I want a multi-purpose park, which was amazing because they understand what that means, and they understand that means that there are different pieces to the park. They can spin in one area and they travel. And the park is sort of unfolding in front of them and tells a story of, okay, I'm going to go to swings and then I'm going to go to the next thing and spin for a while and then I'm going to go to the monkey bars kind of thing. And it can be, I tend to design in pathways. So to me that's a very, we can create a story and create a journey through the park to bring these different things. Shade is important. Parents were very clear on that. Could be the trees that are existing there today. We don't want to get rid of trees that are starting to mature as they are, and we want to keep those going. So that's one thing we've asked for on a survey, to know exactly where the existing trees are and perhaps add more trees. Parents and grandparents will tell you that is the most important thing to them when they're waiting for their child while the child is playing. The kids were also talked a lot about climbing and being able to get a different perspective. So they're used to 3 feet off the ground and sight line, and they like that idea of getting some height, whether it's in mounds, climbing up mounds or on the ground, or climbing up ladders or climbing up to the big slide kind of thing. And spinning. Everybody talked about spinning. There's a lot of talk about spinning. So, and there's a lot of different ways. And I think part of that is because there's a really cool 3-person spinner at Carlson. So the kids that go to Carlson know that's a really cool thing that they've been experiencing this last couple of years. And there are bigger spinners that we can talk about, that get you, it's the modern version of the merry-go-round, basically. You can get 30 kids on some of these things. And then the chain link is not preferred was another thing we heard. So these were some of the ideas. So as kids were talking, as people were talking, we wrote down on the whiteboard a lot of the things that were coming up. So zip line, basketball came up. So I'll talk to you a little bit more about that. Swings, net climber, monkey bars, bridges, sand pit with a digger came up. Slides, definitely people wanted slides and they want open slides so that you can see what's going on in those slides. So the higher the slide gets, the more it needs to be covered. So it's a couple of trade-offs there. a spyglass, they're all, even down to some of the detail, what we're talking about. And then definitely no mulch. So things people did not want to see is they don't want mulch, they don't want wood chips. And even to the point where, they want a different surface than what's there today, which is kind of a rubberized mulch. It's glued together so it doesn't move around and blow, but it's darker, so it's hot. So that was the other thing. And then fun for the older kids, basketball came up. So like I said, we'll talk about that a little bit more. So things that I really, as a designer, picked out of what type of park do you want was something that was joyful, imaginative, and immersive. Those things kept sort of coming to the forefront when we were having these conversations, both with the city staff as well as in the community meetings. And then it's important to be child safe. So regarding the fence, we want to make sure that it doesn't look like a jail yard, but we want to make sure that it is safe and that the kids are contained and that people feel comfortable going to the park. And then lighting. So we talked a little bit about that. So I'll get into sort of examples. So the first one here is on lighting. So instead of doing big spotlights or that kind of thing, I would recommend that, and because we are, the city is working towards dark sky regulations. I don't think that they've been approved yet, but thinking about that, and I agree that is really that's the way to go. Is that things that are lights that are downcast, things that are glowing from underneath the benches,
Short wavelength stuff.
Yeah, it could be. So the one in the bottom left here is more of an artistic expression, in that it could be part of the equipment that's glowing, or it could be small things throughout the park that just allow for a little bit more ambiance light. And in that conversation, we'll have to decide, at what time the lights would be available, there, and also what photometrics we're working towards there. Because I think it would not be the same photometrics necessarily as a parking lot, but what is safe there that still allows for if we want lighting in there at all. So that's one of the things to think about. John, how are we doing on time?
We're getting towards short.
Okay. So we're moving a little bit quicker here. So some of the ideas on water. So these are spitting fountains. They don't have to be men spitting at each other, but they could be a simple nozzle, spewing water from time to time. Sort of like you see those in different places. It could be more of a redirection of the creek, so to speak. Carefully, you have to think that through and how that would work with grading and that kind of stuff. But, if we're thinking big, then that's something to consider. And it could be more of an expression of, snow gets in there, it melts, and it creates this cool little crevice throughout the park kind of thing. So if we were to consider making this park larger, because that's one of the conversations that has come up with city staff, and so it's really doubling the size, pretty close to doubling the size of what it is today, which is approximately 8,500 square feet without the survey. That's what I'm coming up with. And if we wanted to consider putting in a half-court basketball court there, and that was something that I think in our last conversation, I don't know, I think you were there.
It's come up
Andy.
it came up at Courtney Riley. We're at Shelley Quinn as well as a future people wanted. It's just tight over there to get it in. So.
Yeah. So, and it would be a half court, but it could be something that's really, it doesn't have to be a old basketball court. It could be something colorful and fun. It could be an artistic expression. It could be, we could have an artist come and give us real ideas of what the the back wall and the surface is essentially. So kind of wanted to put that out there. And then the other concept that came up was, should it include exercise workout equipment? There's a couple different thoughts about, are there other places in town that could be, because it's along nearby the Greenway Trail. It's one area that would be a convenient location to sort of veer off and have it. As a parent, you could work out there as your child is right next to you doing their thing. And in my opinion, in this particular case, it should be designed as integral to the playground if we consider this. And what I mean by that is it should be pieces that are, yes, they're geared toward workout for adults, but they're also geared toward ninja course and that kind of thing for kids, so that they really do have a bit of a double duty. And thinking that through carefully so that there's the opportunity for both of those things to happen in that space would be my recommendation if we consider that. So one of the touch points tonight that we really would like to get is the size of the park and the shape of the park. And so the existing park today is approximately 8,500 square feet. It is long and narrow, right along the creek. And that's what it is today. And it could remain that, no problem. Another option though is to consider approximately the same square footage, but making it more of a square shape as opposed to that long, skinny, narrow shape. Because what happens there is the long, skinny shape lends itself to things in the back not getting used, or if you've got one kid playing on the east side and another kid playing on the west side, then it's a little harder to navigate, the ones at the preschool section, which is the far west side, and the kids that are on the far east side. So making it a little more square, and I've started to look at sight lines from different angles. I think it's a little early to show you those, but I do have some basics here to go through it. The other option, if we want to consider adding the basketball court and a workout area, would be to take this entire space. And so in our conversations with staff, the thought was, this is an opportunity now to think about how should this be. And just because we're showing, 15,000 some square feet here of playground doesn't necessarily mean that we're taking all of that. We could still have a green buffer along the greenway there. We could still do different things and design it, but this gives us a little bit more space to be creative in how that works. One other thing that staff has talked about is bringing in a trail on Courtney Riley Park. I don't know, John, you want to talk about that?
There was originally supposed to be an ADA accessible trail associated with the ADA fishing spot that was built several years ago now. And what it could do is improve access to the creek. That is a place that a lot of people try to access the creek. And so we've talked about having a trail kind of around the periphery of the park that would be like a greenway spur, which would be pretty cool. It's something that I think would be good in our community to have another walking experience too. But that would be something that we could design a little bit. I don't know exactly what it would be other than something tied to the creek and ADA accessible.
Well, need to have the handrail and that defeats the entire purpose of the rafting access.
We built a hiking trail in Gilpin County at the rec center that's ADA accessible without one. With crusher pines, but it's like graded a certain way.
And the other issue is when you put a trail next to the creek is you inherently have children playing on the trail, and that increases the risk. So I would vote against that 100% of the time.
Okay.
That's a nice way of saying it. We have a hard time keeping families out of the water.
Mm-hmm.
Right there, and when we start adding features that entice
them to be near the water.
Yeah.
That just compounds the problem.
I may have misspoke from what we actually have been talking about. I wasn't meaning like at water level, but just
It
Just
it
along
doesn't
the-
matter, when you allow access next to the creek without handrails, and if you put handrails in, that has a whole different problem with rafting and some of the stuff we have going on. You allow, when you improve access next to the creek, you increase the risk to families because they don't understand the risk. And they'll go down and play,
I understand.
and that's.
John, even if it's not at level, we have such an ebb and flow on that creek throughout the year, so right now it's kind of low. During its high water season, you know, your pathway, which could have been above the creek, is now at creek level.
I'm all for adding access, I just think there's a responsible place to do it, and when you look at the number of rafting companies that come in and out of that creek, which generate money also per party to the city. But from a rescue perspective, when you start adding infrastructure and all that, it complicates an already complicated area.
All right.
When they're unloading hundreds of tourists per day. Right there, it's just, you don't want to add to that.
So, yeah, and so this was a big discussion at the community. It's also been a big discussion in our staff meetings, meetings with staff and in the community meetings, you know, the feeling was, yeah, it'd be great to have an area that people could experience the water in, but the reality is that there is a danger to it. So how do you do that? And is there a way to do that? And it could be that particular flow may not, you know, allow that to happen safely. One of the ideas that was brought up was, you know, could there be temporary fencing so that in low water area times?
But that requires additional management on town employees,
Yeah.
which is, we're already stretched thin now. My issue is what's the benefit? I think the benefit to me, and like Scott, we grew up in this town, we played in that park since we were little kids. Making that entire end of the park larger and having a basketball court and things like that is money well spent. More so than a park, than access on that side of the creek. If you want to improve access on the other side where the fishing access is and make that wider and more accessible, I totally support that. From the EDA's perspective.
Are you talking like Riverside?
Yeah, Riverside's
Riverside's
a
a
lot
lot-
better access over there. or
It's
do
a lot
something
more accessible.
To expand that or whatever, it's been since what, 98, 99?
Yeah.
You want to make that bigger from an ADA compliant access thing, I think it's totally money well spent. We don't have rafting on that side, we don't have a lot of things on that side, all we have is a park
Mhm.
that people can enjoy that they inherently don't. But that also might include adding more ADA parking on that side.
Mhm.
As part of that would be money well spent from ADA, in my opinion only, to improve opportunities for people that are limited mobility.
And you know, just the trail has been discussed, but it's not something that's really been a part of this project. So
Yeah, it's not part of this project, but that is.
Just look
something
at,
that's- yeah.
when we look at the big picture from a risk perspective next to Creek, there's a lot of things that have to go into that.
we do have another session or another item that's gonna take a little bit of time.
Okay,
Do you want to move along towards seeing about direction from council or any questions and other questions or?
well, yeah, I think the biggest question tonight is the size of the park, and it would be great to get some feedback about the lighting. If we want to explore the lighting a little bit more, I think that would be great, to know, but I think the size of the park is really the biggest thing, because designing the park, you know, right out of the gate, smaller is very different than designing it much larger, so.
So I've only been on 2 parks. One is in Idaho Springs and one is at Mild School. And I know that these are very expensive endeavors, so already I can say that without a doubt, the water feature, I just don't think we can afford it. I don't think they can afford it. I don't think the city can afford it. But before, I mean, I guess where's the money coming from? Because if we're gonna double the size, we're doubling the cost at least.
Yeah, so let me walk you through, and then John, I'll let you take the grant question, essentially. So we know that the parks in our region were about $28 a square foot, in 2019. So if you add escalation and contingency and COVID escalation and, which is a real thing, we're about $45 a square foot. And that's all in. That is ground surface, that is play equipment, that is, fencing, that's all of those things. Now it's fairly basic on all of those things, but it's all of those things. So we are at, for 8,500 square feet, we are about 385,000 at a minimum. And I know, and I'll let you kind of go into what we have, which is more than we have right now. If we expand it, and again, we can say, okay, it's gonna be that whole area, but we're gonna actually leave a good portion of it green space, and we're not gonna, just because we're saying we're expanding it to that space, doesn't necessarily mean we're gonna fill every nook and cranny, and maybe the basketball court is a placeholder until there's more money for it, or there's different ways to think about the zones that we're building. Now, the other side of that is, if we are looking at a 15,000 square foot park and we want it to be a showpiece, something that, you know, the 29 million drivers along I-70 will come and visit, or people from, we know that there's Facebook groups that these parents travel from park to park. All over all over North Denver to South Denver, they look for parks to go play in, and for their children to experience. And so I don't know that it's a tourism driver, but it definitely is a, you know, and we also know that Kids Corner takes kids to Vail, all the way to, you know, parks in the south and parks in the northern part of the metro area in busloads. So it can be a place to come. Now, all that being said, and with the trails being built and all these great things, there is GoCo money out there to look at. And John, I'll let you.
Yeah, I think the thing that we've been wanting to do is build a park for our community that our kids can enjoy. When you look at Ruth Mason Mill Park, it's oriented towards a younger crowd. When you look at the skate park, it's going to be oriented towards an older crowd. What we're missing is that maybe as young as 6 to 12 range in that area. And what those kids want is to climb, and they want to be a little bit more active in their play. They want to have safe danger, if that makes sense. Like, you know, they want to be able to take risks in a safe environment. And that's what's really important for a playground for that age group. And to do that, you have to have structures that they can play on, that they can climb and monkey bar around and things like that. We do have some elements of those in our playgrounds. One of the things that we have that's pretty cool that probably we can't replace as nice as we have is definitely our swing set. That's a really good swing set. And I think Paul would say as well that some of our other equipment is not necessarily needing to be replaced. Now it may, you know, as we design something, that may change. We can see what we can move and play with depending on how the park
I
looks.
don't
But
think you can move it once it's in place. I don't think.
that's
Yeah, you can, but some of those, even the swing set, I think needs to be reviewed for.
Yeah, you have
but what I'm trying to say is that there's potential to use some of what we've got. And that doesn't necessarily mean it'll happen because we haven't entered that phase of design yet. But in terms of money, one of the sources that we can use for this is our CTF funds. That comes from the lottery. It's a trust fund that we get a certain disbursement from the state from. We have about $80,000 saved up in there just for a park improvement here. That's the source that we can use, and that money continues to come. The other thing that we can do is there's a GoCo program specific for playgrounds, public playgrounds, that we could use for this. That could fund the whole program potentially. We can also probably do something creative at Shelley Quinn Fields when we do that playground and do a grant application, a bigger application that would cover both. But I think that is a really good question about what our budget for this project is going to be and what we can anticipate from grant funding. And I think one of the things that we've been trying to do as we've approached this project is think about, you know, in the beginning phases, what do we want the playground to be, and then figure out how we can fit whatever our budget constraints are to it. And that's why, you know, water elements, you know, Paul has had some ideas about how water might be incorporated in a way that isn't expensive for the city. We're probably not going to have like a really fancy splash pad, but maybe there's some other ways that we can get some of those ideas going. And I think, you know, we've talked about ways our communities come together in the past and cut down project costs. I think we can still do that. It's just a matter of, you know, the really expensive things that we can't really do ourselves are like the poured in place pad or what, I forget what you call that. Yeah, some of that stuff is just, we can't do that. But that being said, we're still very early in this design, and what we really wanted to do is see, you know, if we take that whole chunk of land and we program it playgrounds, it could still be grass, like in the, you know, maybe we have buffers on both sides and maybe there's grass in between, and then you have little pods of play or something like that. So it doesn't necessarily, you know, we just don't, I think what Carla needs is a little bit of direction on how much of that space should be dedicated to play. And then this light question is relatively new, in East End Overlay District and that zone district, there are some light considerations, but I think we could, within, you know, even within the regulations, I think we could find maybe some compromises, like maybe in the wintertime it stays on until 7 or something, or 6.
I mean, the light thing is, I just don't want them all
Right,
night long.
yeah.
I mean, obviously, you know, 2 hours after sundown. I know, like 2 hours after sundown, is good, and that could be all through the year, so they could play
Yeah.
later in the summertime when they have more. That wasn't I just don't wanna see spotlights, like basketball court spotlights, you know, all night long.
It's right in the middle of, I mean, it's not in a resident, well, it's kind of across from
Trust me,
residential.
I can
It's
see the
close,
park.
that's what I was trying to get at, it's close enough that it matters.
Right there.
Yeah, but I think that was the direction we were looking for, is just, are you guys open to a larger park or a different configuration of park? And then are you open to Carlo looking into this lighting issue and
I
see
mean,
how it might work?
I think any one of those parks looks amazing. I'm just saying, we have so many things that we're
Yeah.
spending money on, and I mean, nothing would make me happier, and I will tell you that, I'll backtrack a moment. Anytime we talk about tourists coming to town to use our kids' stuff, it's just not even there for me. I only care about our kids in town. I don't care about anybody else visiting right now. We have visitors, we're not worried about that. But the best part possible for our kids within the realm of us being able to pay for it and not having a half completed project. That's where I'm at.
Well, I don't know the stretch that's in front of the park right now. I don't know how that's utilized. I don't think we utilize it, or it's not
doesn't
being
really.
utilized that much.
It's green,
Kind of an odd
there's
space.
utilities through there, there's a Comcast line, right? Is that all that there is?
I
And
think
so,
it would be great to expand the
Comcast
park
tower,
out farther.
Because the maintenance nightmare trying to get the grass and done.
Yeah,
yeah, it's not quite big enough to really play ball on or something like that either.
and I like the idea of a half-court basketball. I mean, how much do we spend on horseshoe pits?
I wasn't on council for that, but I go to the public.
I've got a plan to go with.
But I think half-court basketball court would be used.
Well, it was, we used to have one at the rec center.
Yeah,
Color
people-
remodel one, it was used all the time.
People always talk about it,
Back
and
when
so
we-
this is an image, from the parking lot there, just beyond the parking lot, I guess, in the street. And so you can see that green area, and really,
It doesn't get utilized, I don't think.
you know, somebody might run around it, but really, there's no buffer, so if your kid's running around there, you're gonna tell them to go inside the fence so that they don't run in front of a car, right? And so the idea that there could be some sort of buffer, some sort of low fence, some sort of benches along that edge, and you start to kind of hug that whole area, and it can still be, you know, and what I would recommend is, so that orange space there is sort of saying, okay, if we're looking at sort of a climbing tower, something with slides, something with, that's kind of the bigger piece. And then you start to fill in these other pieces around it. So if we don't have the funding for basketball right off the bat, we have a place for basketball to come in a year from now. If we don't have the funding for a spinner and a balance beam, then, you know, those can be added after the fact, or they can be donations from private businesses that maybe have a platform or something like that. So, and you really focus what phase 1 budget is, so to speak, what you have in hand, what you have in the city budget to put towards it. We put that towards the grounds, the boundary, fencing, so to speak, and the tower piece, or the showstopper piece, so to speak. And then we can have sort of the auxiliary pieces around it as the money comes in.
Well, just because we are really getting short on time, I would say that I'm for larger if there is some grant funding. I'm with Kate on her concerns about, we have a lot of demands right now. But there has been money set aside. It's only a fraction of what we're talking. So this is just really very grant dependent. And I do like Carla's idea that if we don't have the money immediately, that perhaps in a year, we allocate money for a half basketball court or something. That might be a good, another good way to look at that.
Like maybe do it in phases?
Well, I mean, yes, it may not be ideal, but if we only have funding, say for the first 12,000 square feet.
Well, I mean, honestly, if the playground goes in all at the same time, the replacement is all gonna be at the same time. So that should happen at the same time. The basketball court, again, that's lifetime. I mean, it's 25, 30 years. I don't know how long.
Sure.
It's a hoop, whatever. I mean, that could be the next phase, and what other big feature, the spinner or something like that, could be another third phase, because they seem to be things that would be components that will all deteriorate at different times. That's.
It could be, and I mean, and I don't know that it needs to be this particular layout, but in this particular layout, we could really design the primary park on the west side, close to the bathrooms, because that's where the little kids need to go half the time. And then really start looking at phase 2 being a basketball court, the workout area. And I think one of the things that came up in the city conversation, the staff conversations, is making sure that we have a nice landing for that bridge on that side. So as people are coming back and forth from the mountain park, that it's an inviting area, and maybe that's where, throw your fishing rod in over the edge there or something. And so.
Is there enough direction?
I think so.
Okay, great. Well, thank you, council.
All right.
All right. Well, next we've got Amy Saxton and Willa Williford here. Willa is the consultant that has been working on the IHOP project, which is the Innovative Housing Opportunities Program that we're working on. And if you remember, back in 2022, Idaho Springs and Clear Creek County collaborated on a grant application for $165,000 from the Department of Local Affairs that we matched with $55,000 of city money and county money. And we were awarded that to do a couple of tasks in Clear Creek County collaboratively. The first is a community engagement campaign where we are working to help the community talk about what kinds of housing we have, what some of the challenges we have around housing are, and how some of these problems might be collaboratively addressed. We're doing some work to align our zoning codes of the different cities related to affordable housing. So we have a consultant on board who has worked with each community, talked about goals within that each community, and is working to make recommendations for how their goals for housing might be maintained within each place for a local control kind of thing, and then how we can align them so that when somebody comes to build housing here or preserve housing, they have kind of a clear path forward. And then the final task is to see if we could develop what's called a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, which is an authority that would be built from the county and each of the municipalities as a board. So we would have representation on that board, and they have all of the powers of a housing authority, but connect regionally. So it's a very powerful type of organization. And there's a lot of different things that an MGHA can do. And so what we wanted to do today is give you a little presentation, which Willa's got up on the screen right now. This has got the video that we made for our community engagement campaign that's about to be really kicking off in full force, and then some more information about that MJHA. So Willa and Amy, do you guys want to take it from here? And then
yeah, we'll take it from here. Thank you. Thank you, Jonathan. You gave a bit of an overview over several of our slide deck that will save us some time, which is a good thing because we are a little bit short on time here today. And so, yeah, we're going to talk. Jonathan gave you an overview of the project. In this presentation, we're going to give you a little bit more information on really what an MJHA, a multi-jurisdictional housing authority, is and what it can do. And really the focus of this presentation is really to give you as the council an idea of what it means to join the MJHA. and how it's funded, how it works, what the contribution is, and what's in it for Idaho Springs, what you benefit from. These are the 3 tasks. Jonathan described them: the community engagement, the zoning code review, and the multi-jurisdictional housing authority. You can go on to the next slide, Laura. And the one thing we also wanted to explain is the process that we've been using. It's been a community informed process. We have this group called the Project Advisory Team Housing, PAC. See, I think we get some cleverness points here. And we have representation from a lot of different members of the community, including the school board. I wanted to point them out too, because we have 2 people there that are no longer that are no longer members of the school board right now, or the schools. But we do have we have broad representation, and so we just wanted to point that out. Next slide. And this is the consultants that Jonathan mentioned. We have one consultant team focusing on the community engagement. We have a video and storyographer group. And then we have the multi-jurisdictional housing authority team, as well as the zoning code team. And Jonathan and I are the project leads. Next slide. And has anybody seen this video?
I know I have.
Okay, well then I think it's worth the time to show the video. So Willa, why don't you go ahead and show it? It's a video that we produced with a lot of input from members of the community, and it's the cornerstone of our community education campaign.
Housing up here is really hard to find. I know people working 2 to 3 jobs, single parents, trying to recruit any, potential employee. It's always the housing, affordable housing.
And I have seen it grow to the point where many residents are having to give up 50% of their paychecks just to keep a roof over their head. It's not very equitable when you can work in our community and not live here in our community. It's just wrong on so many different levels.
The affordability aspect of living in Clear Creek has become an issue with us. We've had 8 management companies in 6 years, 3 management companies in the last 8 months. Most of them just come in and give us a rent increase.
It's very hard for employees to find a place to live. Oftentimes there will be roommate situations in motels, cramming into these small spaces because rent is very high here.
People really need to join together and start speaking out and standing up for their rights. My rent went up $300 at one time. They expect you to work for minimum wage, but then they want to charge you top dollar to be here.
I realize tourists are needed. I understand that aspect. But who do you think serves these tourists? Who do you think pours their beer? Who do you think runs their rafting trips? People live up here. We have to survive.
We've recently received a grant from the state. That grant is supposed to help fund an effort so that we can find an actionable housing program for the people in the county so that everyone has an opportunity to housing. We call it a clear path home. And the idea behind it is that we want to find a clear path to a home for everyone. In addition, sometimes there's resistance to what people are concerned about, what this housing is going to be like. And so what we do want to know is what people do want. What do they say yes to? What do people really want to see happen in their communities? What fits so that we can design around that?
I have never seen such a cooperative environment on a given subject as right now on affordable housing. And I am talking about cities, counties, and the state all working in the same direction for the same goal.
We want to take a close look at our zoning regs in each of the jurisdictions and figure out if there's things that can be changed, what could those be? Each of us have our challenges with that because each town and the county itself have a different flavor. The other thing that we want to do is to look at Is it feasible to create a multi-jurisdictional housing authority? It pools resources, whether it's funding or energy. Realistically, if you get affordable housing anywhere in the county, it benefits all of us.
Take a look around you, go explore our towns, the recreation outside of them. This place is beautiful. Go up to the top of Guanella Pass at night, look up. There's no place that I would rather be. This is the place that is my home.
We're not asking a lot. All we want to do is just survive, you know?
This is our moment, this is our time to capture these resources, these tax dollars that are our tax dollars at the state and federal level, and bring them home to bear on this issue, so that we can once again build the kind of community that families can thrive in.
So that is our video. Pretty much the cornerstone of this education campaign and this effort, and it really expresses the core elements of what we're trying to do. And the multi-jurisdictional housing authority is, as Lynette mentioned, it is an opportunity to pool resources. When we were, Jonathan and I were presenting to the Rotary a few weeks ago, and George Marlin was attending, and one of the things he pointed out was just that neither Jonathan or I have the word housing in our title. And none of the individual entities have any real staff effort dedicated to housing. And it's a shortcoming, and it's one of the main things that also came out during the work that we did with Willa initially when the county wrote the housing strategy report, which was one of the main reasons that Jonathan and I kind of got into all of this, was that said, none of you by yourselves are doing what needs to happen to really advance housing. You all want to do it. Everybody's interested in it and has a little piece of resources, but we weren't able to do it collectively and all together. And that's what a multi-jurisdictional housing authority is really trying to do. So this idea of I say yes, trying to identify what are the proactive steps, that's really what we're here to talk about. And I am going to hand it over to Willa to talk a little bit more detail of the nuts and bolts of what a multi-jurisdictional housing authority is. Willa.
Good evening. Yes, thank you so much. And apologies that my camera is not working this evening, but I want to share that Jen Lopez is also on the phone with us and has been supporting the multi-jurisdictional housing authority effort and has extensive experience in this space, including running one for several years in the Durango area. So we have had a multi-jurisdictional housing authority working group that has met 4 times to really guide the work and set up, ask the questions and give us feedback in the context that we're sharing with you this evening. They're actually going to be convening again next week after we've completed our roadshow to all of the elected officials, save Silver Plume, which will be the following week. And that, so this is has been a hardworking group and really appreciate the participation from all the jurisdictions in it. So what we've completed with the group was a review of the all the multi-jurisdictional housing authorities across the state, kind of how they're structured, what their board is, what their revenue sources are, what powers they've decided to evoke, and kind of appreciate what sort of borrow the best from our peers around what we think could work well in Clear Creek. We also did a survey to prioritize the powers, and we used that Clear Path Home working group as a sounding board for that around what are the priorities for your community. And we'll touch on what the outcome of that in a second. Right now, we have our intergovernmental agreement in draft format. We're using this roadshow to get a lot more guidance on refining that. Our purpose and programs and our tools and processes also, just really in draft as we are listening and getting your feedback. And then we were putting a pretty fine point on the budget, revenue and performance metrics, because we expect those are pretty vital for buy-in in this first year, and really getting concrete about setting up this agency and having, you know, your commitment of participation, and you know, extending that out long enough that we think the organization could really get some traction in the community. So I'll let Amy talk a little bit about some of the specifics of those purpose and priorities that we see emerging as the core areas where the MGHA would be working.
Thanks, Willa. So we think there's 3 basic functions that the MGHA might do. One of them is around the area of advancing affordable housing, and that will come in several different forms. It's a little bit of mix and match. But in general, that would be in the area of developing more affordable housing, improving the existing affordable housing. That might be things like deed restrictions or a buy-down program. There's opportunities to convert existing housing to affordable by subsidizing renovations, so that the cost of owning it becomes more affordable compared to the value. And then also the MJHA could also provide resident services like connecting people with resources like weatherization, rent subsidies, tenant advocacy, and this MJHA would be able to provide Section 8 connectivity, helping landlords and tenants have Section 8 access. And then the yellow column is an example of a revenue generating prospect. A lot of our neighbors, multi-jurisdictional housing authorities, add a revenue generating line of business to the MJHA. One example of that, the example we're proposing is that our MJHA could provide property management services that could do things like particularly if it provided property management services to mobile home parks or short-term rentals, or even to low-income apartment buildings. That could be a business line that could also help with tenant advocacy and change the dynamic between property management and be the liaison between landlords and tenants. That was created a difference in that relationship, and also created a revenue stream, because that would be a fee for service. But that's not a done deal by any means, but it's an example of a relevant type of service that could generate revenue and help advance the mission of the MJHA. I'll hand it back to you, Willa.
Thank you. So this, and I'm going to go through this very high level because I know we want to have enough time for some discussion. But basically, with the working group, we summarized all the things under state statute that multi-jurisdictional housing authorities are able to do, and then did a little bit of a inventory of, are they a good fit for Clear Creek? You know, maybe yes, maybe someday, and maybe not. So this provides kind of the template for what we have in the IGA as it's currently drafted. And I'm happy to, if something catches your eye here, I'm happy to circle back to this for more discussion in the Q&A. But I want to jump into the budget because that is our highest priority this evening. And we know you are in budget season. So we have cultivated a potential operating budget of about $220,000. This was with some push and pull within the working group of it's too high or it's too low. But we think we found kind of the Goldilocks spot there for kicking it off. And we have played with several models of how we might organize contributions from the different communities. And we actually got quite a bit of feedback last week from the county commissioners, really wanting to emphasize fairness and kind of everybody together at the table on how we do this. We also, in our conversations with Empire, they were very supportive of the idea of MJHA, but concerned that if their financial contribution was lower, would they have an equal vote on the board. And that has been a structural component that we've anticipated, that each jurisdiction will have an equal vote regardless of their financial contribution. But this is very much a work in progress. And we'd love to get, feedback on this. And we anticipate we're going to play with some additional models that create, that look at distribution of jobs and look at other factors around, kind of finding a balance of who has lodging tax funds, and then recognizing just this overarching, this is a regional problem. We all benefit from participating in it together. How do we do that in a way that respects everybody's ability to pay and brings enough to the table to make a meaningful difference?
And our goal would be to create a sustainable organization too, that eventually could pay for, in large part itself, or most of it. And there are some grants through Prop 123 that we could use, maybe to set some of this up at the beginning.
Yes, thank you, Jonathan, because absolutely, we, as Amy alluded to, we anticipate this is an organization that will have revenue streams over time, and that our hope is that we get a commitment from the local jurisdictions to see the work in the early years, and that over time they may keep that contribution constant or have it decline as other revenue sources come in. We also recognize, though, that this is just an operating budget, and that there's capital needs and programs that also have their own budgetary needs. So, to the extent that the jurisdictions can participate financially, it really it seeds those match funds that are needed for other sources, and is really powerful around making you more competitive as a collective group over each community trying to go it on their own. So this is very just high level kind of some ideas about in the early years, other resources starting to come in to reduce the burden on the local jurisdictions.
The only thing I would add there quickly is just to Jonathan's point, I think, is that I don't know if this was your point or not, but I think that the contribution, because of that, I think it's reasonable for council to think about what is about this as even if there are other resources that come in, which there may, and that could be used to offset what Idaho Springs contributes to the operation of an MGHA should it exist. I think it's what I've been mentioning and sharing with every council we've presented to is that a question is, would each entity wish to reduce its commitment each year, or wish to contribute a consistent amount and just make a commitment amount of the same level, so we're not renegotiating the budget every single year, and it's just a set commitment, we make it, it's in the budget, and we're making that commitment to housing, which I don't think is something we want to skimp on, or to try to spend as little as possible on, but is something that, and then if there are grants that come in as offsetting, that then the MGHA can build up a fund balance to have as available for capital grant match or other things that might come in handy. So, or to Jonathan's point, we could be looking at the MGHA to try to get to try to cover its operating funds through other means. I mean, there's a variety of ways to think about this, but so we can be looking at it like we should try to get it operating so it covers its operating funds, or we should be thinking, let's make a commitment to a certain amount of money every year so we can just commit to running this thing and committing to it. And then we look at things like, how do we make sure it's doing what it's supposed to do, and ask other questions. So those are just a couple sides to the same point when we look at how much we're asking each entity to contribute. So I think those are some lessons.
Thanks, Amy. Yeah. So we've also been working on just how would we measure success? What are the ways in which we might want to be able to set some expectations in the early years of the organization? We've also talked about what specific tangible benefits might each community need. Where are you feeling pinch points that a MJHA staff could really help you right out of the gate? Because we know that everyone is struggling in the affordable and workforce housing space, but just what specific to Idaho Springs would you might perhaps ask for? And we can come back to this. And then as we think about next steps, we are intending to, we'll be meeting, as I mentioned, with the working group to share back from the feedback of these road shows. Then we're hoping that early in 2024, we can do a joint study session of electeds across all the participating jurisdictions so that we could be in the room together to make some decisions about how we are going to organize the funding and the composition of the board and so forth. We have a proposal for you to respond to, but that is very much just a draft. You all are the ones who actually set the policy and will vote to participate in the IGA. Our hope is that following that joint meeting of the electeds, the IGA itself goes out on a roadshow, and it's pretty well vetted at that point, and it's not a big thing that needs to be sort of negotiated back and forth extensively because you've all done the work together to be on the same page. And then we'd be doing, basic organizational structural development and hiring for an executive director. And Amy's repeated deadline is that we have these things in place by July of next year, which I really like. So that concludes our slides. And if you have a few minutes for discussion and feedback, we greatly appreciate it. If that's not timely, then perhaps you can share thoughts with staff, or we could convene again at another time.
Well, I would suggest this is a multi-year commitment. Amy is exactly right. I think the last thing we want to do is, go and rehaggle the commitment every single year. It's going to take a few years to get this off the ground. So I think that our commitment was fair. I think the population method is very fair. And, I think there's no reason why a multi-jurisdictional housing authority wouldn't be successful. I'm thankful that we already received one $165,000 grant. And I think that, at least in my lifetime, this is the most money I've seen available for this particular subject. And I do see a lot of people working towards the same goal with the state, the counties, and the cities and towns.
Thank you. Other feedback or reactions?
I mean, honestly, guys, I'm not entirely sure how this is gonna work, to be very fair. Right now, the presentation was too short for me to hear anything but what the budget's gonna be. I didn't hear how you're gonna implement housing in Clear Creek County or Idaho Springs or Empire, Dumont. I didn't hear what that game plan looks like and where does the money go. All I really heard is what the budget's gonna cost and what the next 5 years look like. So for me personally, there's more work session that I need to have more information before I could actually really be like, yay, this sounds like a great idea, other than just another group to advise us, which we have plenty of in Clear Creek County.
Yeah.
Multi-jurisdictional housing authorities have some legal abilities that we don't currently have. There's a lot of them, but they can do a lot of things that I don't know that we're gonna do. They can take debt, they can do different kinds of taxation. But the primary thing they can do is they can preserve and provision housing. And they can do that through a couple different ways. They can do it through getting grants. They can also get private activity bonds. They can work with developers. And I think ultimately what they can do, as Amy said, they can be all-time quarterback on housing. And we can work through this board to achieve some of these regional goals that we've really struggled with over the last 10 years to get across the finish line just with timing. I think our housing person at the county does a really good job, but she's a half-time employee and she just doesn't have the bandwidth to put into this effort what it really needs. And we know that in our community, there's like different needs in different places. we don't want to tear down historic homes, but there are people who might build an age in place if we got them like this or that or the other, you know? And
I'm gonna
maybe we
base
can
this
do-
on the last council meeting where, and the last 2 or 6 planning commissions meetings, where established homes, housing, 3 apartments were foregone for tourists. So if the plan is that in fact, we do have a housing authority that oversees that that's not allowed, then Idaho Springs doesn't seem like it's really going down that path. It seems like it just wants to pay in and let somebody else take care of that. So that's my opinion on that.
You guys would have a seat on that board, so I think that that's the way that it would be. That would be, you know, the policy of the city would line up with the regional initiatives. But like you said, we would have a bigger work session about this to really talk it through. What we really need to do right now is to be able to develop those ideas in a way that we know is generally in line with the goals of the city and the city council specifically, so that we can work on this idea of an IGA that we can bring back to you with some more specific information. And that would be our kind of our next big step.
And I think the IGA, like what in a work session, we would be talking more about what is possible, not we're going to do it this way. Because we're not going to bring a baked cake to anybody and say, here, this is what you're eating, you know, like, it's to talk about how, what is possible and what the systems, the MJHA brings to empower Idaho Springs's vision. And
Sure, that's right.
Everybody's vision, and but you're right. This
I
was
think
not
we went
presented.
kind of backwards into this, no offense, but that's the way I kind of feel about it.
We did, you're right, and this was a little compressed in time, and we
Right.
just had less time than.
I stand with Kate too. I need to know a little more about how it's gonna be implemented, and I think development is one, but where do you get that development money from at some point to assist a developer to do affordable housing?
From Proposition 123 and private activity bonds, which they take, but we would be working with them. But there are funding sources available for multi-jurisdictional housing authorities to do that. They can also do things like, for instance, Riverbend is a LIHTC, low-income housing tax project. And from administratively, us managing and making sure that they're following what they're supposed to do is difficult for the city. But multi-jurisdictional housing authority could do that work too. There is a lot of things that they can do. One of the challenges we had tonight was this was just a really busy work session, and we tried to fit in we thought we had a little bit longer period of time than we did. So I would just like to see, you know, we'd like to bring this back to you in a more full-fledged format. These answers exist. We need to have the time to show you all these pieces, and we can do that.
And just the county commissioners also need a second work session to talk more about it, because they had, we didn't have enough time to answer all their questions either, because, so, cool,
I'll look forward to that.
You guys have any questions right now? Any more about whether this is going, or any more direction you'd like us to put into this process?
No, I think we just need a bigger session.
Yeah, okay, we'll do that in the near future. We've got a little bit of work to do on our end, just to make sure that we address what you said tonight, and we'll get that done.
Yeah, cool.
Mayor.
Thank you all so much. Yep, we look forward to continuing the conversation and appreciate your questions.
Thank you, Willa.
Thank you.
Yes, thank you. So one more item, I think it should be very quick, and that is the memorial benches. I think we had a cost breakdown in your packet. And one direction I know the staff was looking for, and I thought Paul Crane did a pretty good job bringing this subject up. But if you're gonna have $1,000+ bench that the city will and its citizens will enjoy for probably decades, it did seem reasonable to waive the installation cost, since the family is going to pay for the bench and any plaque that goes with it.
And Paul's okay with that?
Yeah.
Yeah, he actually thought that was more than a fair trade for the city to get that kind of benefit. Or we had been charging about $300 for the install. So that would require an update on that schedule.
I think that sounds really nice.
Where do these get installed then?
The applicant can request the place. Pastor Bill is with us right now. He's the one.
Yeah,
that
I'm on with you all.
Oh, hey.
Hey, guys. Good to
He
see
has-
all of you.
identified some property the city owns above the water wheel. And ultimately what happens is Paul Crane has the authority to approve or modify a request. And basically what Public Works wants is to make sure it's a safe place that they can actually install it and they can get to it. And so he would work with Pastor Bill to figure out that location. We also had another member of our community recently pass away that'd like to have a memorial bench, and they'd like that located at the water wheel. So we may just replace one of those benches and put it somewhere else because they're still in good shape. So
They're both good locations.
yeah, one thing that did come up in this conversation that council should consider at a later work session is Carmen would like us to consider First Amendment policy about how we name what we put on the plaques, because there are some, legal considerations for what could be on a plaque. And she thinks that we do need to look at like what our policy is,
I got you.
but that could be done at a later time.
So for direction, Kate, you all right?
I'm
with the
absolutely,
waving?
I
John?
I love memorial stuff.
All right, we're good. Jeremy?
Yeah, makes sense to me.
All right, Scott, okay.
Thank you, council. Pastor Bill, we'll get with you and finalize the details here in the next little bit.
Okay, sure. I appreciate that. And there was one other line I thought maybe I would add on that inscription that I sent to you as well. I don't know if that's going to make much difference, but it would just be to recognize that the bench is given in loving memory of Mary by her family and friends. So just something like that. And then the other request too is if you guys can just kind of keep me informed about when it's actually going to happen, I'd like to be out there, when it's actually set in place. So that's a small consideration. So, but thanks for working on that. I sure appreciate it.
Yes, sir. Thank you for being here.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Have a good night. Thanks for being with us.
Yeah. Thank you.
All right, well, it is 7:12. I apologize to everyone for us going over a little bit. But let's take a comfort break and we'll reconvene in about 5 minutes.
Anybody want chocolate? Get rid of the chocolate. Chris wants some chocolate?
I do not. I got one more.
Yes, you do. I'm good.
Yeah.
Chris?
I'm sorry. I'm
Oh, did they?
Well, the guy sent me I'm sure it could be a different.
I do.
Not like this far. Because then we have these guys, we can walk behind them. I saw that.
Yeah. Is that just one person or is it staff? It makes sense if there's like. Yeah, right. That's. A lot. Yeah.
What's that?
Well, what's that? I saw. It won't come.
I heard maybe Mr. He did it. Not here. I really feel like. We can have two. My library. Sure. Has 5 boards. Well, and I agree with that too. One thing I do agree with, we're doing the playground, and they asked some very open-ended questions, and I was like, oh my God, guys, what were you doing? You don't even do that with a bunch of parents. And kids, we want Disney World, we want slides into the river.
Sure, exactly.
I can dream too, I mean, I can come up with some stuff. I want a laser show, I mean, I don't hear that. I was like, I mean, I hope I wasn't sounding like I don't like water parks, I do, but a water feature in our backyard, we have one, it's enormous amount of water.
Well, then you gotta winterize it.
Then you gotta winterize it, and that's why we got rid of the fountain.
I think it'd be hard for us to do water feature. We're continually saying we have a drought issue. It's kind of against that.
Counterintuitive.
Right?
Yeah.
And you can't use river water because those kids can say.
Well, not only that, but you can't divert any water into that river. You're not doing that.
There's a minor water right issue
It's a tissue that'll.
Take it out, put it right back in.
They do not care. They do not care.
Yes, we're wasting. And you also can't put treated water back in the river without.
Putting it through the
discharge
plant.
water. Oh, you can't. So you couldn't shoot the rest. That's why it was treated water. It was, now it's not. That's why that was a problem.
Yeah, and
There's a bunch of rules.
and the 4 months that you'll be able to use it, I don't. Well, even when they were talking about the gentle slope down the river, that's all the river people, that's not, we don't get to decide that even a little bit. All right, I'm glad I wasn't the only one that was gonna get the water feature going.
The idea of expanded park.
I like the bigger part, and I do think the square, and adding on to the other stuff on the other side is a good idea.
It's the same size now as it was when I was a little kid.
It is. Yeah, I still wanna know if everybody knows what the name of the guy is, like, does anybody know who he is?
Yeah, I'll shoot you an email.
Cooper Riley, you know, Courtney Cooper Riley? I mean, it's a very interesting background.
Oh, quite a writer, friend, personal friend of Jag Edgar Hoover.
Yep, he was also the pot czar. He was the drug czar under J. Edgar Hoover.
One of Bob's Reddit, I read,
Actually, I did a little study on him for one of our library meetings, because we have one of his books down there. And he wrote several, but the real mystery is why was he found suicide in a New York City hotel?
Right.
At a pretty young age too. It wasn't like he was, oh man.
No, and he had a lot going for him.
Oh, he did. Plus he was this huge fly fisherman, which is why that part of it. And in fact, the fly rod, I believe it's called the Cooper Riley.
Oh, right.
His best friend, yeah, his best friend named it after him. And it's still out there on the market today. I don't know anything about fly fishing, so I can't really confirm nor deny it. Supposedly it's still out there.
That's a lot.
Huh?
You got a lot.
I got a lot. I like this guy. He's very fascinating to me. Every now and then wonder, like a little bit of information. Escape my brain.
Lisa, thank you for making it tonight.
Oh, well, I apologize that I was late. I
Oh.
cleaned up children, so.
It's good. I'm glad to see you.
Mayor, Jim's online as well.
Okay, good.
Lisa's sitting here. With the girls on this side of the team.
Jamie?
I don't know.
And Scott's like, what?
What?
I have an announcement to make before we begin. Jimmy lost his father-in-law on Friday. And he is still good enough to join us. Although it's a very trying time, he has been trying to finish up things at the mortuary today and is joining us remotely. And we really appreciate that. And I know I speak for everyone, Jimmy, when I say I am very, very sorry for your loss.
Hi, Lou.
Thank you all.
Jonathan, no rush, but let me know when we're good.
You're good.
Okay. I would like to welcome everybody to the November 27th regular city council meeting here in the city of Idaho Springs. And we're going to convene at 7:19. And it will start off with roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Here.
Kate Collier.
Here.
Art Cacavelli. Scott Pennell.
Here.
Jim Clark.
I'm here.
John Curtis.
Here.
Jeremy Jones.
Here.
Thank you.
All right. All please rise for the pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. Please be seated. We have an agenda before us tonight. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve the agenda for November 27th, 2023.
Thank you, Kate. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from Scott. Any discussion of the agenda? All right, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Does anyone tonight feel they have a conflict of interest? Hearing none, we'll move on to the approval of the minutes. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to move to approve the minutes from November 13th, 2023.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
Second.
And a second from John. Any discussion of the minutes? Hearing none, all those in favor, please raise your right hand and signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, we'll move to the bills. Do I have a motion?
Move to approve the bills to November 27th, 2023.
Thank you, John. Do I have a second? Second from Scott. And any discussion of the bills? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do we have any public comment tonight?
No, Mayor, nobody has signed.
All right, thank you, Wonder.
Everybody online?
No.
We don't have anything with liquor licensing. Do we have our finance officer? Okay. We don't have any resolutions, so we will go on to ordinance first reading, starting with ordinance number 12. Do I have a motion?
I'll move to approve ordinance number 12, series 2023, and ordinance amending section 21-210 of the Idaho Springs Municipal Code concerning permissible fence height.
Oh, thank you, Kate. And do I have a second? Second from Jeremy. Any discussion? Hearing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
John Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
All right, we don't have any second readings tonight. Our city attorney is not with us tonight. City administrator has no request for action, though he did submit a report. Assistant city administrator, no request for action, but Jonathan, I just want to make sure you didn't have anything else to
One
share.
more item. Just wanted to tell you, Santa was here on Saturday. It was a huge success. We had over 120 kids and about 300 people downtown
Very cool.
for Santa. So it was a really good one.
Yeah.
What did you guys light?
The
What was
the
it?
lights were beautiful. We got really cool new lights that kind of flare out like this, so it fills up the tree a little bit.
Okay. How's the tree doing? Is it gonna make it?
Probably not. But
Arborist says.
Maybe we can ask Santa for a new tree.
Arborist says it will fill out. It's, we were expecting it to fill out a little bit more before the lighting, but, yeah.
All right.
Santa will bring us a new tree, right, Paul?
Okay.
I think that's the route I'm going to.
Wonder, thank you for the report and checking the computer as was necessary to get it to update our
Calculate
sales tax
correctly, correct.
information.
Yes.
And did you have anything else further tonight?
No, I put in the packet, the press release that we'll be releasing on December 1st about the phasing out of plastic bags.
Oh,
So
yeah.
now we have the bag fee. Now there will be no plastic bags. There'll be paper, still a fee, same fee, 10 cents, state house bill. But what's happening in January of 2024, which affects food service, is no more styrofoam. So I plan on reaching out to most food services personally and letting them know that this is upcoming.
And I noted that if you do get styrofoam after the date, it's only because they're allowed to use existing
What you
inventory
have, correct.
until it runs out.
Correct.
All right, very good. Thank you, Wonder. And Chief, no request for action, but I wanted to thank you for the update on that fentanyl bust that we had a couple months ago.
Sure.
And did you have anything further tonight?
I don't, Mayor.
Okay, all right, well, thank you.
Yep.
We'll move to Public Works. and we have a $22,000 request. Do I have a motion?
Make a motion to approve $22,000 for a letter of agreement for engineering services with JVA Consulting Engineers to prepare an environmental assessment for the Highway 103 water line replacement project from line item 51-72-7320.
Thank you, Jeremy. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second from John. Any discussion? All right, a roll call, please.
Mayor Chuck Harmon.
Yes.
Kate Collier.
Yes.
Scott Pennell.
Yes.
Jim Clark.
Yes.
Don Curtis.
Yes.
Jeremy Jones.
Yes.
Thank you.
And Paul, thank you for your report. Did you have anything else further for us tonight?
I do not, thank you.
Okay, well, thanks. Water facilities, good report. Well, we're well within everything on our goals.
Oh, yeah, it works great.
All right. Ed, anything further to share with us tonight?
I do. I included,
And by the way, great photos.
yeah. I included, the presentation that I made to the South Platte River Basin, grant. They approved the request.
Wait, we've already heard they've approved it?
Yes.
Wow.
We would be getting 40,000 from them.
Okay.
Awesome. And they're recommending that CWCP give us an additional 400.
That is outstanding. Wow. And to hear that fast, yeah.
We haven't gotten it. We haven't gotten it yet.
All right, Ed.
That's where we're at with that.
I appreciate that very much. Thank you.
I did want to bring up one thing, and
Sure, Paul.
I'm so sorry.
You bet.
But I know, in, Lou Howard's report on the cemetery, she had mentioned Willie Prickett and some of the work that he's done with, and this is outside of normal working hours where, Willie's done a fantastic job with trying to keep our cemetery maintained, and he rounded up a bunch of volunteer help. He got them up there one weekend. And they went to town with weed eaters. And this was outside of the normal cemetery cleanup day as well. So
Awesome.
Nice.
Willie Prickett did a fabulous job there. I just wanted to get his name out there.
I
Thank you.
appreciate
That's
that,
awesome.
Paul. Thank you for letting us know that. I would just like to share that we do have another event coming up with the mixer. There will be a mixer at Yard's Tap House tomorrow at 6 p.m. if any of us can make it. We'll be talking about economic development and the changes for downtown. What else there, Jonathan?
What we've really been doing is using it as a listening session. So we're taking all the issues people have been raising about Floyd Hill construction downtown, potential parking structure, all that kind of thing. We're putting it into these big spreadsheets that we can create issues that we can kind of help people, like, so we can work through policy to address each one. And the point is resiliency and sustainability. We're trying to use some of the momentum we built within the community, especially during COVID, where we were able to iterate rapidly to come up with things that worked for everyone and just keep ourselves on a trajectory that aligns with, council and the community's goals. And so we did really well with this at the last meeting. I want to say we had pretty close to 70 people at Pojo's about a month or so ago.
Mm-hmm.
And this one, we're hoping for a similar turnout. There will be some libations available, so it should be a good night.
Yeah. Jonathan, do we have Lou Howard with us tonight?
I do not believe so.
Okay, yes.
Yeah, Lou said she was just gonna watch, and not, speak of it, but she helps so much with the cemetery and me particularly with keeping the records straight and everything, and she just volunteers all of her precious time, and we love her.
And we do, and I was honored to do a cemetery tour with her a couple of years ago. And I will just tell you, my frugal nature, I could not have been happier. What she does with $4,000 or $5,000 is absolutely amazing.
Mm-hmm.
So I saw in her report, Chris Alley, for example, who's done a lot of the steps, it's been a combination of volunteer and paid, because I couldn't believe she could get all of this concrete steps done for just almost nothing.
They look great too.
Handrail, everything.
Yeah.
So people need it to their loved ones. The motive is great.
Yeah, that
Yes.
particular spot was pretty tough.
Absolutely. So, she really is very motivating and really operates on a shoestring. And I think we're all very much in her debt.
Yeah.
And the cemetery looks wonderful. All right, our next council meeting is gonna be December 11th. It's gonna be a work session and regular council meeting. Chief?
Hey, I just thought of something here.
Sure.
Just a reminder to council that there will be the December 7th ceremony at the bridge for the Pearl Harbor.
Yeah, you're absolutely right.
To
Yeah,
remind everybody.
we always do that in the morning,
Right,
usually pretty early, right on that 23rd bridge.
right, 7 AM.
I'm sorry, Chief.
I believe it's 7 AM.
Oh, 7, okay, all right. All right, thank you very much for that reminder.
Chuck, I had one little thing.
Sure.
So over the weekend, Doug and I went down to the School of Mines Geological Museum. You've never been there, it's free, it's really cool. However, on one of the little displays that was talking about the discovery of gold in Colorado, guess where the discovery of gold in Colorado was?
Uh-oh. Central City?
That's what they're saying. So I have set Cassandra and Lisa Manifold, I've stick them on them. And I called them and I said, just an FYI, somebody's gonna come around and wanna know why you guys are saying this, because you kind of dedicated the entire
Rewriting
county.
history after all this time.
Kind of dedicated the entire county to the discovery of gold,
It's a
so.
very long debate. There's a
That's, I
huge
know.
Thing about it.
Well, why are they here then? And I even said, well, why are the school
Well, it
mines here
depends
then?
on what you call a gold strike, is basically what it boils
He
down
was
to.
spring and George Jackson was January.
Yeah,
I looked.
George Jackson was hunting and, yeah, it's interesting story though.
I know, but I still want them to correct it and at least they give both places credit.
Yeah.
That's all I want. I want our name on that for marketing purposes.
Another note too, Chuck, the budget, our income sales tax was up 18% month over month of last year, it looks like.
I think we're running 23%.
23% year to date. Where does that compare in our budget? Do we, is that
Okay,
above,
so
is that above? our-
ideally, it would be 25%. We're probably gonna come in around 4.6 million. Last year, we were 3.850. So we need to be at about 4.6 just because we had a 1 cent sales tax increase, right?
Okay.
So if we are keeping with what was an all-time record for us, if we can tie that, we'll be around the 4.6. And so far, it's looking like it's gonna be real close. Does anyone have anything else for regular session before I recommend we go into an executive session? All right, well, thank you. I'm gonna go into executive session here in just a minute. I do, thank you very much.
So for this one, since you're not receiving legal advice, I record the whole time.
Yes, exactly. That was my understanding.
Hi, guys.
See you.
Have a good evening.
Night.
Thanks, guys. Thanks.
You guys want this door closed?
Oh, thank you, Paul. I appreciate it. All right, so we'll go into executive session. I will bring us out at the end only to adjourn our regular session.
Oh, hold on a moment, man. Let me
You
just
bet.
cancel the.
You bet.